Are we? Welcome to our services this evening here at Temple Sinai. I'm Rabbi Benjamin Zober, and unfortunately, Rabbi Sarah could not be here this evening, so I will do my best to fill in all of the things that she had planned to do and left for us, and she sends her well wishes and Shabbat Shalom to everyone in the community and hopes that you are well, whether you are here in person or all of those of you out there in internet land, wherever you are. We welcome you to our Kabbalat Shabbat services this evening. We are praying, as we always do, out of Mishkan Tefillah. If you are virtual and you do not have a copy of Mishkan Tefillah, you can download your own copy of our virtual Siddur at sinaireno.org/live. It will give you all of the readings and prayers that you need. But if you would rather just follow along and recite the prayers of your heart, that is also wonderful and absolutely welcome. We are just glad that you have found a place to welcome Shabbat. We begin with a reading this evening. It is on page 9 in your prayer books. Please join me. We offer thanks, O God, for this Shabbat, which unites us in faith and hope, for Shabbat holiness, which inspires sacred living, for Shabbat memories glowing even in darkness, for Shabbat peace born of friendship and love. We offer thanks and blessing, O God. We now turn to page 2, thank you, for our Shabbat candle lighting, and it is my pleasure to welcome up Neva Donovan to light our Shabbat lights this evening. There are matches if you'd prefer.
Yeah, no, I go with the traditional.
Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivonu lehalid ner shel Shabbat. Thank you. Amen. Hopefully, when you came in, you got one of these blue cards with a few songs on it. We will be singing Shir Chadash. Shiru l'Adonai kol haaretz. Shiru l'Adonai shir chadash. Sing unto God, all the earth, a new song. I will sing unto God a new song. Sing unto God, and we'll all sing along. All the earth a new song unto God. Shiru l'Adonai, kol haaretz. Shiru l'Adonai, shir chadash. And we continue our welcoming of Shabbat with Lecha Dodi, which can be found on page 20. As is our custom, we will be singing verses 1 to 5 and 9. And if you are able, when we reach the 9th and final verse, we invite you to rise and turn to the entrance of whatever space you are in to welcome the Shabbat, the Sabbath bride, into your midst. Lecha dodi likrat kala yadadai 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 pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala yadadai 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 pnei Shabbat nekabela. Shamor v'zachor v'dibur echad Hishmiyanu el hamyuchad Adonai echad u'shemo echad L'shemu tiferet v'letehila Lecha dodi likrat kala yadadai 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 Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala yadadai 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 Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nilcha Ki hi mekor habrecha Mirosh mikedem nesucha Sof ma'aseh b'machshavat chila Lecha dodi likrat kala yadadai 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 Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala yadadai 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 Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Hitorari Ki ba'orech kumi ori Uri shir daberi Kvod Adonai alaik nigla Lecha dodi likrat kala yadadai 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 Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala yadadai 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 Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Boi v'shalom ateret bala Gam b'simcha u'v'tola Toch emunei am segula Boi kala Lecha dodi likrat kala yadadai 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 Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala yadadai 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 Pnei Shabbat nekabela. You may be seated. And we continue with Mizmor Shir, which can be found on page 22. Mizmor Shir liyom haShabbat Tov lehodot l'Adonai Uzamer l'shimcha elyon Uzamer l'shimcha elyon להגיד בבוקר חסדך ואמונתך בלילות, עלי עשור ועלי נבל, עלי היגיון וכינור. מזמור שיר ליום השבת, טוב להודות לאדוני, וזמר לשמך עליון, וזמר לשמך עליון. כי שימחתני אדוני בפועלך, במעשה ידיך ארנן. מה גדלו מעשיך אדוני, מאוד עמקו מחשבותיך. מזמור שיר ליום השבת, טוב להודות לאדוני, וזמר לשמך עליון, וזמר לשמך עליון. We turn to page 26 and continue together with Chatzi Kaddish. Yitkara v'yitkarash shmei Rabbah, B'alma divrach yirutev yamrich malchutei, B'chayechon uvyomechon, Uv'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, Bagala, Bagala, Uvizmahan Kariv, Vimeru, Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabbah Mevarach, Hayalamu Ol Mehamaya, Yitbarach, Yitbarach, Vayishtabach, V'yitpar, V'yitromam, V'yitnaseh, V'yithadar, V'yitarei, V'yitharal, Shemei Dekudesha Perichu, Leila min kol birchata v'shirata, Tushbechata v'nechemata, Damihiran be'alma, V'meru, Amen. The Baruch Hu can be found on page 28. If you are able, please rise. Ya da 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 da. Ya da 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 da. Ya da 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 da. Ya da 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 da. Ya da 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 da. Ya da 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 da. Ya da 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 da. Baruch Hu et Adonai Hamevorach Baruch Adonai Hamevorach Hamevorach Le'olam va'ed Hamevorach Hamevorach Le'olam va'ed. We continue together at the very bottom of page 31. I know that the tide is not an independent force, but merely the submission of the water to the movement of the moon in its orbit. And this orbit in its turn is subject to other orbits which are mightier far than it. And so the whole universe is held fast in the clinging grip of strong hands, the forces of earth and sun, planets and comets and galaxies, blindly erupting forces, ceaselessly stirring in ripples of silence to the very depth of black space. And we close with the Chatima, Baruch atah Adonai hamariv aravim. We read the English on page 32. Everlasting love, you offered your people Israel by teaching us Torah and mitzvot, laws and precepts. Therefore, Adonai our God, when we lie down and when we rise up, we will meditate on your laws and your commandments. We will rejoice in your Torah forever. Day and night we will reflect on them, for they are our life, and doing them lengthens our days. Never remove your love from us. Praise to you, Adonai, who loves your people Israel. Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael. Shema can be found on the next page. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kivod Malchuto Leolam Vaed. You may be seated. We continue together with the V'ahavta, page 36. V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha uv'chol nafshecha uv'chol meodecha v'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavacha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam v'shivtecha b'veitecha uv'lechtecha v'derech u'shachbecha u'kumecha u'kshartam lot al yadecha v'hayu letotafot b'neinecha uchtavtam al mezuzot beitecha uvihisharecha leman tizkaru vasitem et kol mitzvotai v'item kedoshim lelohechem Ani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzeiti etchem Me'eretz Mitzrayim, liot lachem Elohim, ani Adonai Elohechem, Adonai Elohechem emet. We continue responsively on page 39. In a world torn by violence and pain, a world far from wholeness and peace, give us the courage to say, Adonai, there is one God in heaven and earth. The high heavens declare your glory. May earth reveal your justice and love. From bondage in Egypt we were delivered. At Sinai we bound ourselves to your way. Prophets and instructed by sages, time and again we overcame oppressive foes. Though our failings are many and our faults are great, it has been our glory to bear witness to our God, keeping alive in dark ages your vision of a world redeemed. Micha Mocha can be found on the next page. Yai dai 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 yai dai 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 yai dai 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 yai dai 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 yai dai 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 yai dai 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 yai dai 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 Micha mocha ba'elim Adonai Micha mocha nehedar b'kodesh Nora tehilot oseh feleh Nora tehilot oseh feleh Malchutecha ra'u vanecha Bokei ayam livnei Moshe Zelianu ve'amru Zelianu ve'amaru Adonai Imlo Leolam Vaed. Adonai Imlo Leolam Vaed. V'nemar Kif Adonai et Yaakov Ugalo miad chazak mimenu Baruch atah Adonai Gal Yisrael. We continue on page 43, reading together at the middle of the page. Give us a place to rest, Adonai our God. Bring us into shelter in the soft, long evening shadows of your truth. For with you are true protection and safety, and in your presence our acceptance and gentle love. Watch over us as we go forth. Prepare for us as we return. Spread over us your shelter of peace, over all we love, over our Jerusalem and yours. Baruch atah Adonai, haporei sukat shalom aleinu, ve'al kol amo Yisrael, ve'al Yerushalayim. We continue on the next page with Vishamru. Vishamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, la'asot et ha-Shabbat l'dorotam barit olam. Vishamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, la'asot et ha-Shabbat l'dorotam barit olam. Beini uvein b'nei Yisrael od hi leolam, od hi leolam. Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, la'asot et ha-Shabbat l'dorotam barit olam. Ki sheshet yamim asa Adonai et ha-shamayim ve'et ha'aretz. Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, la'asot et ha-Shabbat l'dorotam barit olam. Ubayom hashvi'i shavat v'yinafash, shavat v'yinafash, shavat v'yinafash. Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, la'asot et ha-Shabbat l'dorotam barit olam. Thank you to my clapping section back there. That's great. It's not throwing me off at all. All I hear is clapping. It's great. I love it. We now turn to page 46 for the Amidah. If you are able, please rise. Adonai sevatai tiftach ufi agita hilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Elohei avotenu v'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor Hanorah, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'konei Hakol, V'zocher Chastei Avot V'imot, U'mevi Gula Livnei B'neihem, Leman Shemo Be'ahava, Melech Ozer U'Moshia U'Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham V'ezrat Sarah. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי הכל אתה רב להושיע, מוריד הטל, מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי הכל ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר, מי כמוך בעל גבורות, ומדומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה להחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני, מחיי הכל. אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום ילוך סלה. ברוך אתה אדוני, האל HaKadosh. Continue silently to page 62. When you are ready or when you are finished, please be seated. We now turn to Seder Kriyat HaTorah, our Torah service this evening, which begins on page 245. Assemble the people, men, women, and children, and the strangers in your cities, to hear, to learn, to revere Adonai your God, and to observe faithfully the words of this Torah. And let their children, who do not yet know it, hear, that they too may learn to revere Adonai your God. We turn to page 246, and it is my honor to invite up Sharon Blank and John Louie to open our ark and carry our Torah. If you are able, please rise. Ki mitzion tetzeh Torah, Ki mitzion tetzeh Torah, u'devar Adonai merushalayim. Page 248. Baruch Shenatan Torah, Torah, Baruch Shenatan Torah, Torah, Le'amo Yisrael, B'kedushato, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh Shemo, Gadlul Adonai iti. Uneromema Shemo Yachtav Lecha Adonai Hagedula V'Hagevura V'Hatiferet V'Hanetzach V'Hachod Kiko Hashamayim U'Haaretz Kiko Hashamayim U'Haaretz Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. You may be seated. It is my honor to call up Rabbi Myra Soifer for our Aliyah this evening. Ta'amod Harav Miriam Bat Shifra V'Pinchas LaAliyah HaTorah.
Do you want help?
If you can.
Or do you want to just lean it and I'll do it off the text? Make it really simple? Okay, where are we? Just got all those girls' names in it, huh?
Yeah.
Baruch Hu et Adonai Hamborach.
Baruch Adonai Hambarach Leolam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamborach Leolam Va'ed. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bacha banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch Ata Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. V'tihiena macha tirtza v'hogla umilka v'noah banot slofchad livnei dodehen l'nashim mimishpachot b'nei Menashe ben Yosef hayu l'nashim v'tihye nachalatan al matei mishpachot avihen ela hamitzvot v'hamishpatim asher tiva Adonai b'yad Moshe al banei Yisrael ba'arbaot Moav al Yarden Yericho. Chazak, chazak, v'nit chazek.
Yikes. Really?
Yeah.
How are we to lead on? Time flies when you're having fun. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torat emet וחיי עולם נטע בתוכנו, ברוך אתה אדוני, נותן התורה.
Amen. Now, don't you go anywhere.
Wouldn't think of it. Oh, there, I'll move too fast.
Misha Berach Avotenu ve'imotenu Avraham Yitzchak ve'Yaakov Sarah Rivka Rachel v'Leah. May the one who blessed our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, bless you as you have come up to Torah in honor of God and Torah. May you merit from the Holy One of blessing, protection, rescue from any trouble or distress, from any illness, minor or serious. May God send blessing and success in your every endeavor, together with all Israel. And let us say,
Amen.
Thank you.
Rabbi.
With our Sefer Torah in our midst, we turn now to think of those in our community who need a bit of healing, whether it is of body, of mind, or of spirit. At this time, we are thinking of Wendy Alderman, Kathy Bartlett, Tracy Bartlett, Laura Ann Borsoff, Neil Calder, Laura Cohen, Father Chuck Durante, Jeff Gingold, Stephen Gould, Marlene Harris, Harvey Higdon, Laura Jawad, Kevin Knox, Dave Levine, Harav Miriam Yael Chaya Batsara, Tim Ober, Judy Ramos, Ray Riker, Shirley Rutkovitz, Sarah Batchava, Marianne Schenker, Jessica Wadatz, Bobby Wells, Usher Zelech, Yaakov Ben Rivka Ephraim, everyone affected by the coronavirus, and the Jewish and other communities of Ukraine. If there are other names that you wish to add, if you are online, I encourage you, if you are comfortable, to share their name in the comments. And if you are here, please do so when my eyes and hand meet yours.
Robert Gonzalez, Hal Holden, and Cindy Baker. Springmeyer, Bob.
For all of those names, our song of healing, Misha Berach, can be found on page 253. Misha Berach avotenu mekor habrecha leimotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Misheberach imotenu Mekor habrecha le'avotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirits, and let us say, Amen. It is now my honor to invite up for Hagba and Galila, Steve Pansky to lift our Torah, and Matt and Bianca to help dress it. We all rise. Got this one?
We'll find out.
A little lopsided, but so are so many of us. That's right. V'zod haTorah asher sam Moshe livnei b'nei Yisrael al pi Adonai b'yad Moshe. Yai dai dai dai, yai dai 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 dai, yai dai 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 dai. Yai dai dai dai, yai dai 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 dai, yai dai 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 dai. Yai dai dai dai, yai dai 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 dai, yai dai 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 dai. Yai dai dai dai, yai dai 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 dai, yai dai 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 dai. Page 257. When Torah entered the world, freedom entered it. The whole Torah exists only to establish peace.
Its highest teaching is love and kindness. What is hateful to you, do not do to any person.
That is the whole Torah. All the rest is commentary. Go and learn it. Those who study Torah are the true guardians of civilization.
Honoring one another, doing acts of kindness, and making peace, these are our highest duties. But the study of Torah is equal to them all, because it leads to them all.
Let us learn in order to teach. Let us learn in order to do. Page 256. Eitz Chaim hi lemachzikim ba v'tomcheha me'ushar teracheha darchenoam v'chol nativateha shalom. Shivenu Adonai Elecha v'nashuva Chadesh Chadesh Yameinu Chadesh Yameinu Kekedem. Thank you all. You may be seated. And which one of you is harmonizing so nicely on that? Was that? Thank you. All right. There you go. Sometimes they're born with it. Sometimes it's their parents forcing it on them their entire lives. My grandfather used to tell a story about a time when he was a boy and he pulled some dandelions for one of his neighbors. When he was done, they gave him a dime, a lot of money back then. Now, my grandfather had been raised to believe that helping someone like that was not something that you get paid for. So instead of taking the money home, he buried it. For all we know, some probably 100 years later, that dime is still there. If we did know exactly where it was, we would probably not refer to the corner where he buried it as the corner of Fairmount and Scarborough or Cedar and Euclid Heights, but the corner where Grandpa buried that dime. And we would navigate by that, giving each other directions in relation to that special spot. These days, we don't tend to name places for events anymore. There are exceptions in the more recent past, some cities bearing names that fit their character. That other Nevada city, for example, named for the Vegas, the meadows of tall grasses that once grew in that area. But Reno, Reno is named for an Army officer, Jesse L. Reno, who, as far as I know, never came here. And as for our homes, I suppose if we have a rather large estate, we may give it some sort of a special name. But for most of us, our humble homes are simply the house or the old apartment. We don't name places for things the way we used to. Of course, when we read the Torah, we see that it has a completely different way of naming things and naming people. Not always the most historically accurate, but that's what it does. Names, for example, Jacob, Yaakov, his name literally means heel grabber. Last week's sermon and the little bit that we read just now in the Torah about the daughters of Tzelofchad, Tzel, meaning shadow, and Pachad, meaning fear, a man who had no one to inherit after him, who had no future, in some ways no shadow, and the fear of us losing something when people pass, his name almost perfectly suited to his story. It is no different for the places we go in Torah. This week, the beginning, or in part of our Torah portion, we have Moses' Travelogue. Moses records the starting points of the various marches throughout the desert, the ones that Adonai directed us to. Out from Egypt, Mitzrayim, the narrow place, to the booths we set up in a place fittingly called Sukkot. From there we went to Migdal, the tower, Marah, the bitter place, Rephidim, a resting place, and so on. Why is it so important for Moses to recall all of these places that might not really be places? For all the times when we say it's not about the destination, but the journey, isn't our march through the desert about the journey? Aren't we trying to get to the promised land? The commentators and sages have puzzled over this for centuries. Some say that it's a matter of memory, that we need to remember the miracles that happened in all of these places. According to one midrash, God tells Moses, write down all of the places through which Israel journeyed, that they might recall the miracles that I made for them. Now, because there's always someone who wants to stir up trouble, another commentator says that it's the exact opposite. This travelogue is intended to remind us of everywhere that we messed up. Another set of commentators point to a midrash about a king whose child becomes gravely ill. The king takes his ailing child to a specialist, and miraculously the child is cured. And as they return, the king recounts for the child the journey that they took to get there, but does not say, here is when we stopped in this city, but here is where you had a fever, and here is when it broke. Rabbi Tamara Khan Ashkenazi explains that the Torah, in recalling this journey, calls to mind the struggle that God had with the Israelites in the wilderness. So we have this account, all our stops along the way to the promised land, and all the names that we have given those places. But there's a problem when we name a place based on history rather than its geography or the people that are there. The problem is that over time, we often lose those places. We forget where they are. Rabbi Ashkenazi points out that we do not know the exact places of the landmarks named in the Torah this week. But we do know the stories. We know the challenges, the triumphs, and the miracles that happened wherever it was that they happened. And that is somehow enough for us, enough to teach us, to inspire us, to remind us of what we learned along the way. Perhaps we should go back to naming our spaces for what they represent, for the moments that we need to remember and learn from. I would like to return to the first house that I had with Rabbi Sarah and the kids, more than I would like to return to 4713 North Edgewood Avenue, Cincinnati, Ohio, 45232. We recount our steps and stops for a reason. Maybe to remind us of God's gifts, maybe to remind us of our mistakes, or maybe it is because whatever lessons we learned are more important than where they actually happened, or any address, or a name attached by a city planner, or the winner of some war. My mom and her siblings grew up with the story of the dime, and then my generation heard it. Shortly before he died, my great uncle Walter, my grandfather's brother, needed someone to shovel his walk. So my cousin and I were voluntold for the task. And when we finished, he held out his hand to pay us. Having heard the story, we, of course, refused. Whether we know the locations of historic places or not, we do still navigate by them. If not geographically, we do so morally. I do not remember where my Uncle Walter lived, but I do remember that cold night, getting to live up to one of the great moral lessons from my beloved grandfather. I could think of it as a place where I too refused to be paid. Or maybe I remember it as the place where I got paid to shovel a walk because my Uncle Walter was the most stubborn man in the history of humanity. Shabbat Shalom. At this time, we turn to page 282 for Aleinu. I am honored to welcome up Heidi Loeb and Leslie Pansky to open our Ark doors. If you are able, please rise. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורל עלינו ככל המונם. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. Page 285. Let the time not be distant, O God, when all shall turn to you in love, when corruption and evil shall give way to integrity and goodness, when superstition shall no longer enslave the mind, nor idolatry blind the eye. O may all created in your image become one in spirit and one in friendship, forever united in your service. Then shall your realm be established on earth, and the word of your prophet fulfilled. Adonai will reign forever and ever. Page 287. V'nemar v'haya Adonai למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא, יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד. You may be seated. In nature's ebb and flow, God's eternal law abides. When tears dim our vision or grief clouds our understanding, we often lose sight of God's eternal plan. Yet we know that growth and decay, life and death, all reveal a divine purpose. God, who is our support in the struggles of life, is also our hope in death. We have set God before us and shall not despair. In God's hands are the souls of all the living and the spirits of all flesh. Under God's protection we abide, and by God's love we are comforted. O life of our life, soul of our soul, cause your light to shine into our hearts and fill our spirits with abiding trust in you. At this time, we remember Alan Harvey Mayer, Richie Zorn, Jeff Blank, Al Grossman, Carl Weinberg, David Stucker, Terry Gregory, Grayson Corbett, Joan F. Nutkin, Andrew Venuti, Gerald Kaufman, Goldie Brewstein, Lucille Alexander, Stanley Browdy, Edna Bailey, Jenna Deborah Danif Cassell, Will Spiegelman, Leonard Fusari, James Holly, Ken Hecht, Roberta Smallreich, Edward Gingold, Cookie Javinsky. In this Shabbat, we commemorate the yard sites of Sadie Strauss Davis, Justin Machen, Lily Brumberger, Jeanette Medvin, William I. Spector, MD, Kara Donovan, John Brogdon, Ida Lucan. If there are other names that you wish to add, I encourage you to do so either in the comments online or when my eyes meet yours. For all those we wish to remember, Kaddish Yatom can be found on page 294. If it is your custom, please rise. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei Rabbah, be'alma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon v'yomechon uv'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala v'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevarach la'olam u'olmei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitba'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yithalal shmei dekudesha barichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata. Tushbachata v'nechemata. Ta'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama Rabbah min shemaya. V'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Osei shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May the one who creates harmony on high bring peace to us and to all who mourn, to which we say, amen. You may be seated. John, are you on duty for announcements this evening?
I'll give it a shot.
All right.
Well, thank you so much, Rabbi, for a good service, and thank you all for coming. It's wonderful to see you all. So let's see. We have tomorrow morning, 10 a.m., Torah study via Zoom. And then on Wednesday, there's a book club visit, or a book club via Zoom. Next Friday is Tot Shabbat, and then a 7:30 Kabbalat Shabbat service. And let's see, coming up Tuesday, August 9th, 12 to 1 p.m. lunch with the rabbis, an open invitation. And then the next temple board meeting is via Zoom on Wednesday, August 10th, 7 p.m. Coming up on Friday, August 12th is the second Shabbat under the stars for the summer. That will be in person only. And that's the South one, August 12th at Callahan Park. And I think that's, anyone else have any other announcements? So nice to see you all.
It's got to be on one of those. Tisha B'Av is coming up.
Yes.
That is on the 6th. That is a Saturday evening. We are doing a joint service with Temple Emmanuel. It is going to be both live at Temple Emmanuel and live streamed. So if you, for any reason, you would want to stay home and do that, you can. This is a really interesting. If you've not experienced Tisha B'Av before, it's a very interesting part of our year. It is in some ways I hate to say the kickoff to the high holidays, but it begins that season. And Tisha B'Av recognizes and commemorates the destruction of the temple. In fact, both temples, that our tradition says both of them happened on the exact same date, but many years apart. And that throughout history, there have been a number of tragedies that have hit the Jewish community and it is our read from the Book of Lamentations. And to sit, it's traditional to fast, to refrain from wearing leather shoes and that, and to think about what it means to truly love that we know. So it is a really, really interesting holy day. And if you are able, we would love for you to be able to join us, as I said, either in person at Temple Emmanuel or online for that as well. So hopefully, if you are able, you will join us for that. And with that, we will head to our closing number this evening, which is Ein Keloheinu. We are going to do the page 322. Ein Keloheinu, Ein Gadonenu, Ein Kimalkeinu, Ein Kimoshienu, Mi Eloheinu, Mi Chadonenu, Mi Chimalkeinu, Mi Chimoshienu, Nodel Eloheinu, Nodel Adonenu, Nodel Malkeinu, Nodel Moshienu, Baruch Eloheinu, Baruch Adonenu, Baruch Malkeinu, Baruch Moshienu, Atahu Eloheinu, Atahu Adonenu, Atahu Malkeinu, Atahu Moshienu. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. If you are here in person, please join us for our Oneg. And if you are online, please join us for our online Oneg Yisma Zoom.